Okay, good afternoon. If I can have everybody take their seats. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I will be conducting today's meeting. Council President Hueso, as he announced earlier this morning, is off to Washington, D.C. We'll be dealing with various water issues on behalf of the city. We certainly wish him the best. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Leitner. Councilmember Gloria. Councilmember Young. Councilmember DeMaio. Councilmember Fry. Councilmember Emerald. Council President Hueso. Council President Pro Tem Faulkner.
Here. Thank you very much. I believe we have a request from my colleague, Mr. DeMaio, regarding S500. We might be able to dispense with that first, so I will ask Mr. DeMaio to comment on that, if you would.
Thank you. At last week's council meeting, Councilmember Emerald, Ms. Fry, Ms. Leitner supported a continuance on this item so that I could be here for it. And my office has been working with the applicant and city staff to resolve additional issues, particularly as it relates to making sure we do the environmental assessment on this project thoroughly. With that, we would need additional time, and I asked for continuance on this item until October 20th.
I'll second that with just one comment.
Okay,
specifically related to the mitigated negative declaration, not actually doing an analysis of all the allowable uses for that particular zoning. That issue really is a problem area that needs further study.
Yeah,
I think it's inadequate, the analysis that we currently have.
And I asked staff and the applicant to review a lot of the comments that were made at last week's meeting, and I think a lot of those things need to be addressed by October 20th.
Okay, with Councilmember Fry's addition, we do have a motion by Councilmember DeMaio. Councilmember Leitner, do you want to?
Just that the comment relative to the mitigated negative declaration, either to have it be revised or some provision for revision should alternative uses be used on site or alternative zoning to be considered on site.
Okay, so noted. We do have one member of the public that wished to speak on this. Mr. Ross, did you want to speak to the continuance, sir? Jarvis Ross?
It sounds like we're going to have a continuance, and my remarks had to do with the issue itself. It would have been nice to know it was going to be continued, otherwise I wouldn't have stayed down here this afternoon. But anyway, so be it.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. We do have a motion by Councilmember DeMaio, seconded by Councilmember Fry, to continue to October 20th. Please vote. Clerk, call the roll. That passes unanimously with Councilmember Young and Hueso absent. Okay, thank you. Let's move back to the agenda in our regular order. Our first item this afternoon is going to be item 332, having to do with the establishment of a medical marijuana task force. Members of the public, if you've had an opportunity to fill out a public speaker slip, now's the time to do so if you haven't. I believe I'm going to be calling on my colleague, Councilmember Emerald, who would like to introduce the item, who is the chair of our Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody who's come down for this important issue. As we've been hearing as a council week in and week out, there are problems in the way Proposition 215, the medical marijuana initiative, has been applied here in San Diego County. Of course, our colleagues over at the county have challenged this medical marijuana program legally and ran out of legal options earlier this year. And as promised, we scheduled the issue of medical marijuana and creating a task force to implement a policy that works for the city of San Diego, making sure we're obeying state law and that everybody's on the same page going forward, protecting the integrity of this program and the rights of the citizens who are in need of medical marijuana, of course, protecting the public. So we convened our first hearing July 8th. We heard from dozens of people on all sides of this issue, talking about enforcement issues, about the science of medical marijuana, some of the social neighborhood impacts, and so forth. We came back a couple of weeks later, and the committee approved in concept a task force going forward to this council. And today we're asking the City Council to approve a task force of citizens to look at all issues involving medical marijuana, the issues that impact caregivers and patients, law enforcement, neighborhoods, community folks, and on a 4-0 vote, I think it was, unanimous vote, the Public Safety Neighborhood Services Committee moved the issue. We're asking today for our colleagues on the City Council to join us in granting formal approval for the creation of an 11-member task force to look at the many issues that involve caregivers and patients, law enforcement, and then how we comply with the state's, the Attorney General's view of how this program ought to work statewide. That 11-member task force would be made up of people who have professional experience and who have some expertise in the broader issues involving law enforcement, medicine, land use, zoning. We would include a medical marijuana patient, social service workers, legal professionals, medical professionals, collective owner and or operator, community planning, small business experts, law enforcement, and land use experts. And we would create a task force that would have a 1-year duration and would report back to the committee at least twice during that time, to give us guidance on how the city should proceed with working within the statute. So at this point, unless there's a report that any of my colleagues would like, I would like to move this item and ask for approval of a medical marijuana task force for the City of San Diego.
We do have a motion by Councilmember Emerald, a second by Councilmember Fry. If that concludes the report, now is the opportunity for council Q&A before we get to public testimony. And I will call on our colleagues, starting with Councilmember Young. Did you want to have?
Well, I can wait. I had comments, so I can wait after the public actually has a chance to talk.
Will do. Councilmember DeMaio.
I guess my question would be, who would respond to questions? Is there someone here from the San Diego Police Department as our enforcement agency of these regulations?
Looking out, I do not believe so. I do see Mary Noweska from the City Attorney's Office. Ms. Noweska, did you want to comment?
My understanding, there's no one here from the Police Department to respond to questions on enforcement.
Is that because the Police Department doesn't want to participate in this committee, or is it because, I mean, it seems rather odd that the Police Department wouldn't be here to answer questions and support this undertaking. Not that I disagree that they're not here. I'm just wanting to let the record reflect that the primary agency that is in charge of enforcement of the city's approach to Proposition 215 to make sure that people are complying with state law and the Attorney General's regulations, those folks are not here today, the Police Department. If I'm going to cast a vote on whether we should be exploring any changes to the way the city is implementing the medical marijuana program as mandated by the voters of California, as outlined by the Attorney General, I would expect to have the Police Department here answering questions and advising us as we undertake any sort of change in policy.
Chair, I think this might be helpful for you, Mr. DeMaio, is that during our conversation at the PSNNS meeting, which, of course, Ms. Emerald chaired, I asked a question to the mayor's staff if they were going to participate in this. And they, on the record, said no, they will not be participating. And I assume that has a lot to do with why the San Diego Police Department isn't here either to represent those views.
So we're about to undertake the possibility of expending taxpayer money on a series of policy questions without our lead agency guiding us on the framing of those questions, without background information on it. And I'm not disagreeing with this, but I'm just perhaps suggesting that for this city council to proceed forward with this undertaking without the advice of our police department, without the support of our police department, probably dooms this effort from the beginning and would probably make this a waste of time and a waste of taxpayer money.